Today I'm gonna do the underpainting of the dunes with a mix of violet grey, brilliant yellow, indigo and titanium white. This results in a cool grey mid-tone which will closely match the shadow color of the clouds, thus creating a connection between the two. Between the dunes and the clouds, I leave a narrow strip of burnt sienna open. When I'll do the dune vegetation later, that strip will be covered with paint as well. The tops of the dunes are covered with beach grass, a tough, deep-rooted peony species that holds the sands of the dune together. I paint the edge of the vegetation with umber green. Umber green is not a very pronounced green, and because it mixes with the wet grey underlayer, the saturation is even less. The sun is behind the dunes, so there's actually a backlight situation. With backlighting, much of the color disappears from the unexposed parts, which makes umber green ideal for this type of light. With a brush of undiluted paint, I can also paint some relief in the dunes. This is a moment where the brown undercoat proves its worth. With my handle in rag technique, I can bring out the brown again, and I really like this effect. The warmth of the burnt sienna colors beautifully with the dull green of the dune. Okay, this completes the underpainting. It doesn't look like much yet, but who knows what will happen tomorrow. Today I'm going to try to give the clouds a bit more volume, but first I'll apply a lighter layer. Just like I did in the previous layer, I'm going to darken the mix a bit further to the left. After all, the sun is on the right. By adding shadows, I'm making a start with painting the different shapes within the cloud. According to Wikipedia, Cumulonimbus is a dense, towering cloud. Keeping your distance is recommended. The next step is to soften the transitions, starting with the lighter parts of the cloud. I use a recent gift from my wife for it, a makeup brush. Works great and is a lot cheaper than the Badger Hair fan brush, although it picks up too much paint to be a real substitution. In the final steps of softening the color transitions, you will still need the fan brush. Because the sun is low, the bottom of the clouds is more exposed than the top. That's why I mainly apply this darker shade to the top of the clouds. Okay, so much for the clouds for now. By making the clouds darker, the next step, which is brightening the dunes that just catch the last bit of sunlight, will really come into its own. With a mix of green umber, Indian yellow orange lake extra, and cadmium yellow, I follow the shape of the tops of the dunes. The light-dark contrast will do its job here, and on top of that, the colder blue of the clouds will increase the effect of the warm color of the illuminated dunes. It is no coincidence that I have made the clouds not only darker, but also colder at this particular spot. I added a little burnt sienna to the mix to create a gradual transition to the color of the spots the sun just can't reach. The result is a lovely warm orange-like color that makes the warm-cold contrast even stronger. The lightest part of the dunes is not directly connected to the sky. That would only make them look flatter. By making the edge a little darker, the feeling that the dunes have volume remains. For the shadow color, I added olive green to the mix. It's a dark green, but with a warm glow. It's also quite transparent, which allows the underlying dark color to shine through. Further to the sides, the shadow becomes really dark. Because the olive green is no longer mixed with the burnt sienna, the character of this color comes more into its own. It enlivens a rather dull background. I leave the top edge open here to keep the suggestion of shape and volume within the darkest part of the dunes. It looks a bit like watercoloring, where you also have to save the light parts. Look how beautifully transparent olive green is, yet it still retains its color. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. To get in the mood, I start with something that is not very difficult, but can have a big effect. With a strongly diluted mix of burnt sienna and brilliant yellow, I apply a glaze to the sandy parts of the dune that are still in the sun. Here too, the effect is increased by the contrast between the cold base color and the warm lightened parts. The color of the sky is still not okay, and the light to dark gradient is hardly visible. So again, I'm painting the outline of the clouds with my 002 Kolinsky brush. And I begin painting another layer of blue over the previous one. Won't be the last one, I'm afraid. I find it pretty hard to get this right in one go. It's either too dark or too light, but without the reference of the cloud, it's more or less a guess. Luckily, this is oil paint, and you can adapt your colors endlessly. That's why watercolors are not for me. Too hard. The only way to find out if the color of the sky is now somewhat correct is to also lighten up the sunlit part of the cloud. It won't be the final color, but I want these two important parts of the painting to be at roughly the same stage at all times in the process. I'm starting with a mix of brilliant yellow, titanium white and a hint of vermilion red. Followed by a mix of cadmium yellow and titanium white. Cadmium yellow is quite powerful, and when added to titanium white, even in small amounts, the result is a radiant light color. In order to be able to judge the color ratios well, the shadow side of the cloud also needs to be adjusted. I made quite some progress today, but the color of the sky is still not right, too dark.